Hello, good afternoon, good morning for the different parts of the world and the people that are connected. Welcome to the session, Race to Zero, Data Research and Art for Transforming Cities. My name is Daniela Torres, I work for ICLEI Europe, and I am so happy here to moderate this session organized by Local Governments for Sustainability, ICLEI, European Secretariat, and the United Nations University Institute for the Environment and Human Security. Thank you very much, the ones that are connected online and also the people that are here. We are starting this session, and I would like to thank everybody for your time. We know that there's a busy week of lots of events and lots of webinars, but we promise that it is going to be a very interesting session for all of us. We are discussing now in this session about Race to Zero, about data, research, and art. We wanted to introduce these concepts in a moment that is calling us, the COP26 and all the statements of the Paris Agreement are calling for a further action when we're talking about climate. We need innovative tools, we need another ways of working, and this is why we are here in this session today. First of all, I would like to introduce our first speaker, which is connected remotely from Germany, my colleague Reggie Tricker, which is a Sustainable Mobility Officer at ICLEI Europe, that he is going to share with us some new insights about the work that we've been doing in different cities of the world, and especially on transport and how to improve sustainable mobility in cities. Reggie, please, welcome.
Thanks very much, Alice, Daniela, and I extend my thanks to people that have joined us today. So I'm going to give you a high-level overview of some of the work that ICLEI has been doing with Google recently, specifically looking at some methodological assessment of the Environmental Insights Explorer within the field of transport. So next slide, please. So to give you a high-level background of the cities we've been working with on this project, 9 cities in total from across Europe of various different population sizes, all the way from Greater Manchester and Madrid, with roughly 3 million people registered in their cities, down to the likes of Lisbon, Mannheim, and Florence, with half a million or so. And these cities have different mobility cultures. So all the way from Madrid with a public transport focused system, to Malmo with very much a cycling culture, to Athens with, as you can imagine, a large number of people that walk in the city, all the way over to Greater Manchester, which is a regional area. You tend to find that the broader the boundaries go in cities, the more perhaps car-dominated cities become. So these were a good test bed for comparing how these cities understand how people travel in their cities, and how with the Google data that my colleague Nicole from Google will explain a bit more in further, how these two approaches to looking at mobility in cities actually compare. So next slide, please. We've recently, very recently, in fact, published a summary of the work that we've done, and I'm just going to give you some observations from the ICLEI side about the data. So the Google data collects across all modes of transport. So it's based on individuals' use of Google Maps. So we pick up everything from walking and cycling through to public transport and driving, which is relatively unusual in terms of transport planning, where we quite often have a data set that's stronger or weaker on different modes of transport. The Google data is also able to be provided at a frequency that's greater than maybe transport planners have been used to. So the cities that we work with collect data on what we call modal split, so the proportions of different transport, anywhere between annually and, if you can believe it, maybe only every 15 years. So having a ready source of information annually from Google is a step forward. It also allows data to be collected from all parts of a city. So again, traditionally city centres may be more of a focus, and suburban areas or rural areas maybe don't have the traffic counters set up, and we have less knowledge about how people travel in these areas. So again, the Google data being the same method used across all the city, its city centre and its suburbs, is an advance in what transport planners currently have. And what's interesting here is the difference between the carbon accounting side and the transport planning side, the Google data is able to analyze and look at the carbon intensive modes of transport. So these are traditionally driving, as well as the non-carbon intensive modes, so walking and cycling. And both of these are important. We mustn't only focus on what's generating carbon, we must also focus on what we're trying to achieve and how that's progressing. And from a transport planning point of view, we've also been able to collect the number of journeys that people have undertaken in the past, but we haven't always been able to understand the distances that people have traveled. And it's obviously the distance that makes the difference to the amount of carbon that's ultimately emitted as a result of that journey. So if I can move on to the next slide, please. So we think this supports the race to zero. As part of the race to zero, cities are asked to proceed with specific actions, and they're also asked to report on their progress each year. And traditionally, this has been done through trying to work out in many cities how much fuel is sold, and then actually converting that to how we think people travel and the carbon emissions arising from that. So although Google is at an early stage of being integrated perhaps into some of these more recognized methods, we think there is potential for cities to start looking at the data and thinking, when we get to 2030, is this a useful data set for us to have practiced and be using with? So we think the final point is we think there's potential for what I call intelligent comparison between cities, so benchmarking. And as I mentioned at the start, cities have different cultures and they have different sizes and they have different ways boundaries are drawn within and around cities. But it allows us to look at a comparison potentially, if we used an informed manner of looking at that, of how cities of different sizes, different shapes, different mobility characteristics compare to one another. And again, we haven't had this in the past. So I would just end by saying that this is a comprehensive set of data. It brings new challenges, but it's definitely a good addition to the tools that we have, and it's definitely something that we can continue to look at going forward and work with cities on integrating into their carbon reporting and planning. So having given our observations, Nick, I can hand over back to Alice Daniela for Nicole to actually show you a bit more about the tool itself.
Thank you very much, Reggie, for introducing this work that we've been doing in the last months to explore the Google EA tool. And I think that you have made an important point, importance of data for better decision making, which is one of the key things that we wanted to bring to this session. Just to start the discussion also, because we have people connected from all over the world, please, we encourage you to please put your questions or start a conversation with us via Slido, which is the platform that we are using. And also, if you are not so shy, you can also put some things in the chat of the platform, so we can address these questions at the end with a very nice discussion that we are going to have here. So now I would like to jump from Europe directly to the United States. I would like to invite Nicole Lombardo from Google. She's connected very far, and before she's there, we are going to put a super nice video about Google EA, because Reggie has talked about it, but now we need to see it to understand what it is about. So Nicole, we are going to start with a video, and then you will be invited to do your presentation. Thanks so much.
The world is working to unlock the solutions to the climate crisis. But without good data, even the most impactful ideas can't take hold. Google's Environmental Insights Explorer is an online tool built to empower cities with data to take informed action, making it easier for cities to measure, plan, and reduce the world's carbon emissions. Dublin City Council used Environmental Insights Explorer to implement smart transport policies to improve cycling infrastructure and track their efforts for sustainable modes of transport. Environmental Insights Explorer showed Mexico City its building emissions and the potential to generate over 4 megawatts of renewable energy from rooftop solar. And in Melbourne, Australia, it highlighted the solar potential to power the entire city. Google's Environmental Insights Explorer, helping create a healthier, cleaner future for citizens around the world.
Perfect. Nicole, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. And Renji, thanks for that great introduction of our work together. Hello, everyone. I'm so delighted to join you for today's discussion on how data can accelerate actions to a more sustainable future we all want. Some quick context, and as you saw from the video, Google sustainability is something that we've been committed to since our founding, both in how we've always operated our business, but as well as how we've made significant investments in our data and technology to help partners and people all over the world make sustainable choices. And among the many technologies we enable, Google Maps is one of them. So hopefully many of you have used Google Maps, whether you were looking to get to the most eco-friendly route from A to B, or if you were looking up information on places you wanted to go. Well, powering Google Maps is a whole treasure trove of geographical insights about the places around us, including information like the size and location of buildings, overhead and street level imagery, as well as aggregated transportation data. And so while all these sources are primarily used to help people find and discover the world, as it turns out, they also contain useful information when we aggregate them at a city scale. And when it became clear that our comprehensive mapping data and computing technology could be used to derive now critical climate relevant knowledge for cities, we committed enthusiastically and we launched the Environmental Insights Explorer. Next slide, please. So in our first year, 2018, when we first developed the tool in partnership with the Global Covenant of Mayors, we were really making sure we were designing it so that we could address the largest gaps of where when it came to accelerating climate action. And so early on, we found out that number one, it was really important to help cities take inventory, to be able to measure where they stand today, and then to be able to immediately take action from that. And then two, to be able to establish plans based on various scenarios that you could use the tool for and translate sort of your bigger targets into concrete actions. And then three, to be able to then act upon those plans. And of course, number four, most importantly, be able to optimize your actions on the ground by being able to see and track your progress at a more local and frequent level within EIE. So next slide, please. So here you are behind the tool. You can see sort of just a quick snapshot of our transportation emissions. EIE we take our highly complicated, anonymized, and aggregated insights, and it allows us to simply analyze the total trips and transportation mode trends by the city. So if you go into the tool, you'll see not only the total vehicle miles traveled, but you'll also be able to see it broken down by percentage of single passenger vehicles, to buses, to rail, to biking, to walking. And so we think that for the first time, and by being able to refresh this activity data year over year, users can finally start to explore some of the differences and track the effectiveness of their programs to optimize as they go. So as Reggie showed you, hopefully this is much better than previous known methods for reporting and tracking. Next slide, please. However, when we rolled it out, obviously this new non-traditional data set using, this coming from mapping data, it was really important that, especially in a market where we have well-established standards and protocols that are being set for counting emissions, we knew it was going to be really critical that we work closely with some of the world's leading networks and alliances, so such as ICLEI here, we've done C40, and cities themselves to be able to validate our models. So you can see here where we were able to see high correlation of our trip accounts against something as simple as a city toll station. So when we were able to validate some of these measurements and see higher correlation, we've also gone on to be able to conduct additional studies. And so as you'll be seeing in sort of this week's ICLEI transport assessment, these studies are really important because it helps us understand the extent to which EIE can assist European cities in advancing their local climate action plans. But beyond the sort of local kind of global emissions activity, we've also started to look at how our mapping data can help cities adapt to climate and the changing climate environments and the fight against climate change. So if you go to the next slide, please. You'll start to see we've actually started to incorporate a new section of our tool called the EIE Labs. And it's actually where we're going to be testing new models with partners in cities. And so, for example, here you're actually seeing some of the first previews of what is our new tree canopy tool that we piloted with Los Angeles, where we're able to help them assess some of the most vulnerable populations and where nature-based solutions actually could potentially help with things like the impacts of rising temperatures and urban heat island effects. So in 2022, we're excited to be able to show some of these new capabilities and expand it to well over 100 cities. Next slide. And then as well as other areas we're testing and piloting is, again, in our EIE lab section, you'll find that we're creating new air quality maps that show the block by block concentration of black carbon and ultrafine particle pollution, which is, we're hoping that with cities, they can now work with architects, designers to really think about how the city's laid out to really protect, again, populations on the ground. And you're excited to share, well, you'll hear from Rasmus here shortly about recent pilots of this work and how it's helped with cities like Copenhagen. And next slide, please. Finally, I just wanted to sort of say, this is probably, we think this is just a little bit of what's possible when you put the power of AI and our mapping data to work. And so by 2030, we hope to see a minimum of more than 500 cities embrace these insights in our tools to be able to track to reduce well over a gigaton of emissions. This is part of our next most ambitious decade of commitments for Google. And so we know that this work must start now. And this is why we're super excited to be bringing the best of Google to bear for our resources and technology and partnerships. And we're expanding our tool to well over 20,000 cities and regions this year, by end of this year, including 50% race to zero cities. So I'm very excited for you all to find this at insights.sustainability.google and looking forward to taking any questions and ideas you might have. Thank you. Back to you, Danielle.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Nicole, for sharing this wonderful tool. In fact, from the ICLEI side, we are very happy to be part of this moment of exploring how the tool can bring value to cities, and we are very happy that to understand that the tool is open for all the cities in the world, not only in Europe, but also others in other regions like Latin America or Asia. So that is something that for us is a very important issue. Thanks for sharing that. And now we are going directly to a practitioner moment here. So we were talking about transformation. So we have here the opportunity to speak with Rasmus Reh, which is the owner of the Urban Digital startup, and he also has been some experience working with Copenhagen Cities Lab in his previous activities. So he's going to share with us the experience that the city of Copenhagen and he had with using Google AI data and how it has been applied to our urban context. Please, Rasmus, welcome and thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, hi everyone. My name is Rasmus. I used to work in Copenhagen and been part of this new labs section in the EIE and working on air pollution data in Copenhagen. So just a brief overview, what is special about the Copenhagen and also the Amsterdam and London investigations in air quality is that we have fitted air quality measurement science grade equipment to the AirView car, and then it's been driven throughout the city a large number of times, at least 6, but there's also on major roads a lot more. So what we have is actually a monitoring of air pollution in the city. We can have it citywide, and we can go ultra deep. So it's a very genuine, exciting data set to work with from a city perspective. So the way we have worked with it is actually in a very open way. So if you go to in the Google Insights Explorer, you can see the maps, and these maps have been a sort of a large part of what we've been doing. So we have shown the maps, but we actually did a publication already halfway. So we had a preliminary map that we took to the citizens and showed them and say, this is actually what we're doing. And the response we got from that publication of a preliminary map was very strong and gave us a very sort of very strong hope that we can actually work with this kind of data to engage people with data and show them what is the current state of affairs, and also where in particular that we would need to act. And then we, of course, refined and modeled and validated the data, and then we have the 2 or 3 final maps for City of Copenhagen. So that is one side of it, and that is what is sort of resting on the Environmental Insights Explorer. Next to it, we actually have opened the data. So everyone can go in and look at the model data and also smaller sections. So we actually have last week published data set with 1 second data. So that is a measurement per second for when the car has driven Copenhagen. So that is very close to raw data, technically refined, but very close to the raw data. And we've given that data sets to the community of Copenhagen. So we have architects, engineers, constructions, people actually looking into these data and used it for hackathon. So that is one way to do it. Last, we have also our own projects where we work directly with the data and singled out vulnerable people, and where in particular do we have interest in sort of protecting the citizens, and sort of how to reduce air pollution around kindergartens, schools, etc., where we have vulnerable children, but also where they stay for a long time. So that kind of activities have we used the data for so far.
Thank you very much, Rasmus. Very concise and very precise. Thank you also for joining us here. I think that you have mentioned an important thing, which is how making this data, probably from Google and from other sources, to the people, to the citizens. I think that you have made a great effort on that. We are going to discuss that later in the question and answer sessions. And now we are going to continue this session. We are going to, now I would like to introduce and give the floor to Flavia Guerra from the United Nations University. Flavia, it took some days to organize this event together. We are very happy to be here, and thanks for coming. I think that with you we are going to have more a global vision of how to use data, research, art, and innovation to transform our cities. Please, Flavia, go ahead.
Thanks, Daniela. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining our session. I'm Flavia Guerra, and I'm a senior researcher at the Urban Futures and Sustainability Transformation Program at UNU-EHS. And like you said, we are co-organizing this event with the ICLE Europe. Do we have the slides? Thank you. Today I want to introduce you to our new project, Transformative Urban Coalitions, or TUC for short. TUC is all about creating or catalyzing urban partnerships to drive systemic transformation towards sustainability. And TUC really reflects our acknowledgement that we are living in a climate crisis, and in order to overcome this, we absolutely need to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. We know this is the goal, we've known it for some years now, but how do we get there, or how do we race there? And TUC is our answer to the need for unprecedented, radical, and far-reaching changes across all aspects of society to tackle climate change. And with TUC, we also recognize that we need urban leadership to fight climate change and to address this climate emergency. And really, cities are at the core of a lot of processes. They have a large contribution to global carbon emissions. But we also know that in order to be sustainable, transformation needs to be socially just. It needs to take into consideration the needs and voices of different urban stakeholders, including citizens. So this is why the aim of the TUC project is to shift the sustainability trajectory of cities towards zero carbon emissions by 2050 by altering the deeper social, political, and technological structures that are currently reinforcing carbon-intensive urbanization. So maybe to make it simpler, our core objective is to form new urban actor coalitions that involve not just the usual suspects like policymakers, but that bring in industry, academia, and the local communities and NGOs to make sure that we can create solutions that are more creative, that are more legitimate and sustainable to urban development problems, that tackle inequalities and reduce carbon emissions as well. So we just started this project this year, and it's supposed to run until 2026. It's an IKI project funded by the International Climate Initiative of the German Ministry for the Environment. It brings together different partners, so not just UNU-EHS, but also the German Development Institute, WRI, and IID. And as you can see from the slide, we are focusing on the Latin American region as the region with the highest degree of urbanization. We have 5 pilot cities spread across Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina. And at the core of TUC's approach is the establishment of urban labs, which will be led by these new actor coalitions and supported by our local partners, which are IID America Latina, WRI Mexico, and WRI Brazil. For those of you who are not familiar with the term urban labs, the TUC urban labs are supposed to be collaborative spaces that foster participatory governance. For example, we will be experimenting with new models of coalition building and trying to empower marginalized communities to more actively participate in urban decision-making processes. And in each of the urban labs, so we will have 5 urban labs in the spread for the 5 pilot cities. In each of them, there will be a catalyst project for transformation. And this project, it's a different project per city that really try to not only reduce emissions, but also answer context-specific social justice issues. And we are very lucky to have with us Jorgelina from IID America Latina, who will speak right after me, to give us a very practical example from one of the pilot cities of TUC, and tell us how TUC is already building on existing participatory processes on the upgrading of informal settlements in Buenos Aires, in Argentina. So there are several work packages within TUC that revolve around the urban labs. We have horizontal and vertical capacity development activities, which are all about leveraging the local capacities of the local communities to co-create knowledge, but also solutions for more sustainable urban development pathways. And these processes will be facilitated by our community of transformation, which brings together actors from across the 5 pilot cities, but also in the future, national, regional, and global actors to make sure that whatever successes we have in terms of processes and lessons from TUC can be institutionalized and then upscaled. And then there's a very strong research component, and here we focus on participatory action research, coupled with creative communications, outreach and dissemination, including film and art, to really try to maximize the engagement of local actors, to trigger mindset shifts, and to enable broader conditions for transformative change, including the creation of new narratives, as well as the creation of this common and shared long-term vision for more just and zero-carbon cities by 2050. And I would leave the PowerPoint there. I want to share with you a video that we put together as part of a communications campaign for this event, and also to promote TUC more broadly, where we asked people from across the globe to share with us some visions of what they see when they imagine the cities of the future. So if we could play that, please.
In the future, I want my city to be peaceful, happy, and healthy.
Accessible for everyone.
Offering equal opportunities for all.
To have a clean river, water, and sustainable solution for it.
A safe and secure refuge for people from all walks of life.
With lots of green spaces that are accessible for everyone.
Where the priority is the green agenda. That includes edible, sustainable,
and community gardens open to every citizen.
In future, I want my city to be more greener and less polluted.
Más limpia, en donde puedan brillar mejor sus colores, sus tradiciones y todo lo que la ciudad tiene para ofrecer.
Be bike friendly and to have reliable public transportation.
Carbon neutral and environmental friendly.
Sustainable, green and circular.
Más calles peatonales, más espacios verdes con niños jugando.
I want to see people, families, and communities gathering together in large green spaces, celebrating, connecting, and flourishing.
To offer much green spaces for pollinators.
Small communities,
local consumption,
less construction,
and more trees.
Menos basura, más centros de reciclaje.
With the numerous disasters in our world today, it should no longer be business as usual.
In the future, I want my city to be resilient to heat waves.
Well prepared for disasters.
Action against gentrification. Housing is a human right.
I want to see the sun still shining over the city.
Los grandes sueños son el principio de todo.
we see that people already have such good ideas about what urban sustainability transformation could look like. And so with TUC and with our urban labs, what we want to really do is to bring these people together and help them realize their visions for more sustainable, more inclusive and smarter cities. I would like to end my intervention by also asking everyone who's watching to share their own visions for the future of cities with us. You feel free to use the hashtag #GreenCitiesJustFuture and find us on social media. And also, if you want to stay up to date with the TUC developments, take a look at our newly launched website, www.urbancoalitions.org. And I think that's it for me. Go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Flavia. I think that you have now situated us in the reality, what people want, what we as citizens want on a city level. I was hearing the expressions on the videos, and I would think the same. I want a green city, a sustainable city. And I think that we have to understand that any activity that we do in our organizations or in our research projects, we need to engage citizens on that. If no, we will never get the sustainable cities we want. Thank you very much, Flavia. And I think that now that we are in this mood of practitioners, I'm going to invite, and we are going to run again to America, and we are going to connect with Jorgelina from Argentina. Jorgelina, you've been there, going in the field there, working with citizens. So happy to have you here, and please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Daniela and everyone. I have a presentation, or yes. So as Flavia mentioned, Buenos Aires is one of 2 pilot cities where we are integrating nature-based solutions, green, blue infrastructure into an ongoing participatory upgrading process, which is having very good results in terms of solving basic urban needs, but which is lacking in some ways more a decarbonization approach or addressing particular needs that will rise in the next 10, 15 years in a context of climate change. So next, please. I will give you some details here of just very briefly. Buenos Aires is part of the metropolitan area of Buenos Aires. In this slide, what you will see is that it shows the percentage of its Buenos Aires city and the 24 municipalities that conform metropolitan Buenos Aires. The little blue dot, I have it in blue, I cannot see which color you have, but well, the little blue dot shows Commune 8, which is a district within the city of Buenos Aires that has over 25% of the population living in informal settlements. This is the area where we are focusing. Next slide, please. In Commune 8, it's where Barrio 20 is located, where we will actually be working with the Catalyst project. It has over 30,000 inhabitants, more or less 2 families living per household, and has a very strong historical process of organization, and which is now being very participatory and involved in the upgrading process, which started in 2016, led by the city government, but with a very strong participation of the community, and where teams from IED America Latina have been involved. Next, please. This transformation process is about relocating families that need to be relocated just next door to the neighborhood because there's a need to open streets and alleys in very dense concentration of houses, providing basic infrastructure of water, sanitation, drainages, etc. So to do this, it was set up from the very beginning as a set of participatory devices which work at different levels, at the neighborhood community level, but also at the block or sector level of the neighborhood, or more at the individual level. And in these spaces of participation, all decisions are being taken from the more strategic ones, where community reference and city professionals supported by NGOs, academics, and other professionals make the more strategic decisions, to the sector level decisions that have to do with where the streets have to be open or alleys, who will be relocating, and decisions are made together for that particular area. And then the more individual or family decisions are made that are more focused on the particular cases of families that have their houses being somehow retrofitted or reconfigured, or that they have to relocate to the neighborhood next door, to the new houses constructed next door. So in this sense, there's a very good base on which we are, with the TUC project, building on a very strong participatory process that we are taking advantage of. So next, please. Here you see the process of transformation very briefly from A to B. In the lower right, you see how the new houses of the new houses units have been built, and you see how slowly it's not that darker because patios are being opened, alleys, streets, and slowly air and more space is being brought into the neighborhood to improve overall quality and be able to install the needed infrastructure of water, sanitation, etc. Next, please. Here are just some pictures of how this process looks like, how streets are being opened, alleys, and how patios are being opened. Within that is within very dense housing units. There's patios. I don't know the word in English, and I never get it right. But patios are being opened so to improve air circulation and light into dense housing blocks. Next, please. Here you see very slowly how the process went from 2016 to 2019, how it slowly this transformation is coming along. Here are some pictures of alleys and streets, particularly streets being opened. Next, please. These are pictures of how patios are slowly being opened also. Next, please. And this is also a photo of how the neighborhood looks like, Barrio Vente looks like, how the very narrow corridors look like, that have less than 1 meter wide, and how slowly these are being opened into alleys that improve circulation, and how families for this are being relocated to the new housing units developed next to the neighborhood. Next, please. So here is an image of how Barrio Vente is looking today. You can see the new housing units, the older neighborhood, and its dense construction. And so with this, we see, which is a very good opportunity to switch to a more sustainable development pathway in Barrio Vente, adding things that were being missed out by those that planned the project, and now we have the opportunity to bring into the discussion. So next, please. Next, please. So actually what we aim with the TUC Catalyst project is address systemic change, as Flavia mentioned, and shift towards zero carbon emissions by 2050, which is a pledge that the city of Buenos Aires made, but also respond directly to climate neutral transformation needs, while at the same time increasing the quality of life of the urban poor. And with this, we aim to catalyze deeper transformation and scale up influencing other informal upgrading processes and policies, both within Argentina and the region of Latin America. Next, please. And to do this, we have recently started discussing intervention options in Barrio Vente, where what we can do different from the traditional upgrading process that is being done right now. And in order to align what TUC project aspires to change, and also what the ongoing upgrading process in Barrio 20. So we have developed a group of potential options, a suite of potential options. And here we aim to address what is going on in alleys, streets, borders of the neighborhood, the patios that are being transformed. And for that, we have planned different things. Next, please. And so we have discussed possible implementation options that make room for more natural environments, and discuss their benefits in terms of reducing or capturing CO2 emissions, improving air quality, reducing heat island effect within the neighborhood, mitigating water-related risk, improving energy efficiency, and the bioclimatic conditions of houses, how they contribute to more community networking, how they potentiate the reurbanization process that is going on, how they can trigger different initiatives, generate employment, or even also a positive health impacts. So we have initiated discussions with local stakeholders, and together we will define the possible options to address decarbonization and social justice, now in Barrio 20, but we're aiming to influence discussions at other levels, both nationally and regionally. And so with this, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jorgelina, for sharing these experiences from a local perspective, from a citizen perspective. And I think that you have brought and you have shown different maps and different ways and how can I say, images of the work that you've been doing locally for us to visualize and understand better what is going on. Thank you very much for sharing those with us. I think that we must have several questions from the participants, from people that are connected. Please, we are going to start and open the discussion now here in the session, and we are going to gather all your questions. So please don't be shy. Put more questions in the chat or in the Slido, and we are going to now see the questions that we have. We have a first question for Nicole. Nicole, could you explain how EIE tools measure the level of CO2 on a street level? Probably you can clarify this process, Nicole. And I have, just to complement, does the tool work in different cities of the world, like for example in Buenos Aires? Can you confirm that?
Thanks for the question, or both questions. So as far as our estimates on the CO2, so what we do within EIE is actually we are applying, so we have our activity data, which is like our transport data, our buildings data that comes from our proprietary mapping sources. And then what we do is we take that and then we apply actually third-party supplied emission factors. So we pull it from a tool called CURB that was developed by the Global Covenant Mayors, World Bank, AECOM several years back. And so we've been basically applying a regional, it's a regional sort of emission factor for both building energy and then like fuel efficiency and so on. So it's not a street level calculation, it's more kind of a regional estimate. What we did do though, as we rolled it out first with cities, and in fact, one of our very first cities was Buenos Aires, one of our first pilot cities. What we found is that when we rolled this out to cities to test, they often had higher, more granular sort of emission factors. So they were getting sources of electricity consumption from utilities. They were getting it from, and so because of that, what we decided is we made our EIE in a way that you can actually go in and adjust those factors based on what you actually sort of were seeing at the local level. So we did sort of now provide the sort of power in the user's hands to go ahead and sort of adjust and input their own factors. And then also gives you the flexibility to sort of scenario plan. So if you're aiming for those the efficiency of your buildings or the fuel itself to get better over time, you can start to see that if you did nothing, if the activity itself, if the number of vehicle miles, stayed the same, or if the number of buildings and the total footprint of those buildings did not change, you could actually see if improving things like dependency on fossil fuel based power or fuel itself, that how it would actually affect the emissions over time. So I welcome you to go and test out the tool in itself. You can see how those factors are actually sort of adjusted. So yes, just to say shortly, yes, Buenos Aires is absolutely addressed in the tool. And like I said, you can welcome you to see that there's a map on the tool that actually shows all the places that will be updated, as I told you, for 20,000 cities and regions by end of year.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Nicole. And I think that the question also covered an important issue, which is the street level data. You mentioned that for the EAE transport emissions, you are not able to estimate, but I understand that for air quality, you are having some pilots, and that is the example that we had in Copenhagen. We are having Rasmus here to explain us a little, because the Google EAE in Copenhagen does gather this information on a street level, especially on particles. So Rasmus, my question to you is, how did you communicate this data, this air quality thing, this data coming from Google to normal citizens like me, like the people that we are hearing? How did you manage to share this data with people that are not so into the data thing?
Yeah, it's a good question. So air quality and air pollution is invisible, and you can't smell it, and so therefore it's actually very hard to see. We use maps, and we use colors on maps, and that is really the tool we have. So that is the short answer. And when people get maps in the hands, the first thing they do is they zoom in on where they live. So it's a very it's a tool that takes air pollution and then actually also fossil fuel burning directly to the consequences, take the consequences directly to people. But we also built some projects, and one of the projects we had a residential area next to a motorway, where the sort of background in pollution is very high, quite high actually. And what we did was actually build a dome. So you have to go, so this message was you have to go inside really to protect yourself against the air pollution in this area. And that, I think, is also a very engaging statement, and where we work with the data from the maps and actually sort of say this is one of the solutions we have to ponder or change things in a different way.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Rasmus. And I think that now that you have touched this issue of putting data into, how can I say, way to understand, to be understood by citizens, I would like to ask Flavia, because your project, the two projects first, I love it. And I think that, how did you manage, Flavia, to use different sources of data and other experiences from other projects, non-structured data, and I don't know, other initiatives in this project, which for me is wonderful. How did you manage to put this into such innovative project in Latin America?
Thanks, Daniela. Well, we haven't managed it yet. We have plans to do it. And I really like what Rasmus said about, when people get something, they zoom in where they live. So this sense of people need to relate to it. People need to feel some sort of emotion when they're exposed to this. And this is what we're trying to do by getting completely out of our comfort zone as researchers and look at arts and film. And so we're working with artists, we're working with filmmakers, and I think we actually should maybe share some of the information for upcoming events that we have in Glasgow, where we actually have filmmakers speaking about how they plan on doing this. But I think apart from that is also this participatory action research idea, where it's not just about us researchers, them subjects of research. It's really about us with them co-creating knowledge and co-creating the solution. So this sense of ownership is really what we're trying to accomplish.
Perfect. I think that yes, working together with citizens is a key thing. Us in the ICLEI Europe and also ICLEI globally, we have like different groups of stakeholders. We work mainly with cities. That is our main goal. But then through cities, we go through the citizens level, and I think that we also have challenges in trying to communicate the projects that we are doing, the activities we are doing, and I think that probably Reggie, which is also connected part of the ICLEI team, can share a little how which challenges or how was the process of working with Google EIE and the new tool that we were sharing with the cities. How would we do this engagement process with the cities during the project development? Reggie, can you share this, please?
Certainly. Well, I think we started with 25 or more cities, didn't we, that we were looking at from a desk research point of view, and then we narrowed that down to 8 or 9, and then we looked at things ourselves, and then we went to interview the cities. And what you always find when you do this is you find that cities have all sorts of different structures, they work at different scales, and maybe they also look at climate and transport differently at different scales, even within the same city. So there's a challenge for us and for them to break down the silos. Maybe there's just doors between departments where climate and transport people don't always speak to each other. They haven't had to in the past. So tools like EIE allows people to come around the same table in some ways and look at data and trying to understand it in a way that they haven't had to in the past before. So yeah, it's always beneficial to get cities talking to us, and this is what we intend to do, continue to do going forward.
Perfect, Reggie. I think that this issue of trying to share information and co-create new things, because I think that is something that we would like to do in all levels. And then I would like to ask Jorgelina, a practitioner in the ground as Rasmus. Jorgelina, how did you manage to do this co-creation process and this wonderful project that you are sharing in these challenging times? No, and especially in areas of Latin America. I come from Latin America, so I know how it works. So when we are worried about COVID, when we are worried about the economic problems, so how are you engaging citizens and the city officials in this transformation of the neighborhoods?
Well, we have this as I mentioned, this very strong ongoing participatory process that has been working very well over the 5 years through the COVID process. Of course, it had its downs, but it was very useful for bringing in all types of support to the neighborhood. And now that we are going on again, I think what it's interesting is to get conversations going on around new themes that prior to the TUC project, they were not really being discussed at the level of informal settlements. Mm-hmm. The city was discussing these themes, but not really looking into informal settlements and decarbonization possibilities and what this would mean. And so we are generating these new conversations, connecting these themes that were sort of in parallel tracks, and connecting new people, bringing them into the table, different actors that before were not really working together. And so we actually hope that this will bring, with all the other aspects that Flavia was talking about, the different components of the project, this will start bringing the changes we aim for.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jorgelina. So we have more minutes. We have 3 more minutes for more questions, please, from our participants, if you want to have another question. But I would like to ask Flavia again. So just to understand your project, so what are the next steps? For example, if a city or a neighborhood wants to join your project, how do you manage that?
So the pilot cities that we are working with, they're closed. So it's the 5 cities. But I think we're always open to finding new ways of passing the message, right? And especially if there's good examples out there. We're setting up the community of transformation, like I mentioned, and this is all about facilitating exchange and co-learning processes. And the goal is not only to keep it strict to our cities, but also to have them learn from cities who have done it. And I think in Europe, Copenhagen is a great example of an ongoing transformation, right? And transformation is it's not only an outcome, I guess more than anything, it's a process. So cities that are already maybe a little bit more advanced in the process, I think have a lot to teach cities that are maybe lagging behind.
And just to close the issue of the questions, I have one more question for Nicole, because Nicole, when you were approaching cities with the Google EIE tool, which kind of challenge did you face? Because now we are going to the level of trying to foster this tool broader here in Europe. So based on your experience, because you mentioned that you have worked in Buenos Aires, we saw in the video in Mexico, but also in Copenhagen, what were the challenges that you as the owner of the tool have faced?
I would say our largest challenge has always been sort of introducing our data when cities have been using different methods for several years. And so when we, I always say cities are very excited to actually see new data sets and new models brought to the market. However, being able to sort of compare it to other known methods has been sort of a challenge for cities. And so that's why this work, especially our partnership with ICLEI and the work that Reggie and team has done to help cities really understand how do you translate sort of Google mapping data to other known methods, and how does it compare? How should you be looking at this? What are specific ways you can incorporate it today? And then also highlighting other cities and how they're now starting to incorporate it. All of that sort of knowledge is incredibly critical in sort of really getting cities sort of very quickly, looking at the data and sort of the tools and resources to start using the data in a rapid fashion. So that's why I'd say, these types of collaborations and working with researchers, scientists has been sort of our most important sort of valuable, approach to really rolling EIE out. So, we look forward to obviously sort of seeing you all hopefully benefit from the report that's, the work that ICLEI's done. And we're looking forward to doing more similar work where we're sort of testing and evaluating and piloting our data as we go.
Perfect, Nicole. Thank you very much. So I think the time has come. We have only 3 more minutes, and I would like to just do a short wrap-up of what we have listened today. So first of all, we talk about the Google EIE ICLEI Europe collaboration, and we talk about the analysis we have done about the importance of using Google EIE data for transport, emissions accounting, and transport planning process. So my colleague Reggie and Nicole have shared the tool, have shared also the key findings of the report. You will be able to find the summary for policymakers of our report in the ICLEI website. We are going to post that in the chat today. So we invite you all participants to read the report, but also engage in exploring the Google EIE tool in any part of the world that you are located. We also heard about the innovative approaches and co-creation processes from Rasmus, for example, how they work on the city of Copenhagen using different types of data from Google. He mentioned the importance of maps, how to make it visual to citizens so they can understand the processes, and then the work that United Nations University is doing with the TUC project. I think that is very important also when we are situating here at COP, important to understand the global vision, that probably the problems that cities in Europe have are kind of the same that the challenges in Latin American cities, but at the end, we all have to work towards the same direction, cities officials, and of course, citizens. We also heard from Jorgelina a wonderful presentation of how she's working on a local level in the city of Buenos Aires, transforming neighborhoods that are sometimes a little challenging when we are facing different problems so far. We invite you also to explore further the new website of the TUC project. Also, I think that we are going to put it in the chat session so we can all explore, and don't forget what we are speaking today. So thank you very much for everybody that is connected online from different parts of the world. Thank you for our speakers, especially Jorgelina and Nicole that are in America. It's early there. Here we are finalizing the day. Thank you to Rasmus and Flavia and the teams also that help support this organization. Thank you very much, and see you probably next COP or soon in other events. Thank you very much and have a good day. Ciao. Bye-bye.